This is a Rough Tiger production.
And you, and you, and you, and you were there. Some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful.
We're gonna sing a song for you.
We're starting off with your Fat Albert impression, or no?
No, we are not. Although I
good.
do remember watching the Fat Albert Halloween special when I was a kid. That's good stuff,
I'll have
man.
to look that up. It rings a bell. I'm not recalling that off the top of my head, though.
With a character called Mudfoot, and that was good stuff. Hello, this is Dream Idiots. My name is Morris. That's Bryan.
Hey.
And welcome to the podcast where every week Bryan and I tell each other stories. Some of them from the news, some of them from the past, some of them from the ancient past, some of them from the recent past, some of them from the parts of our brain where you bump your head on the ceiling when you come in. Bryan, what's up? How are you?
Doing great. Great. Thanks for listening, folks, and doing all those great things for us. If you can, please subscribe, follow on whatever app you're listening to us on. That would be fabulous. And share and shoot us 5 stars. You can give us a review too. That would be super helpful. Helps us climb the charts. Drop us a line at dreamidiotspodcast@gmail.com and check us out at dreamidiots.com, and then Instagram and Facebook. We are at Dream Idiots.
Yay. I'm going to go first this week, and I've got an update as well.
Great.
So shall I get started with the update?
Go.
Okay, the update is pretty simple. The folks in the Georgia case, Bryan, with Trump, are flipping like Cirque du Soleil acrobats. First, we have Sidney Powell, who is still looking like she's irritated about losing out on the role of the gopher in Caddyshack. And then we've got the little fella who he's the one who looks like Booberry. Cheesebro flipping. Wow. It's gonna be fun to watch over the next couple months. I wonder how many more of the 9 are going to flip. Who's next? Frankenberry? I mean,
yeah, the dominoes will start to fall, because at least one of the fake electors, whose name escapes me right now, has accepted a plea deal as well. So you have that person as well. I mean, the dominoes are going to fall. So
a third of them accepted a plea deal or flipped entirely. So
was that really true? Okay.
3 of the 9, right? Because the one that you're thinking of, and then Chesborough, and then the Kraken.
Right.
Bryan, for my story today, a couple of things got me started on this. One is that you and I have been to a lot of live sporting events together, have we not?
Yeah.
We've been to live.
Final Four, and
that's right.
Cowboys games, and
Spurs games, Rockets games. We've been to exhibition tennis when Steffi Graf came down, played at Trinity. We've been to at least 1 or 2 minor league hockey games together with the old Austin Ice Bats at that literal bar in the Austin Ice Bats played in.
The Expo Center,
yeah. And it's that time of year, October, where all of the sports are converging. Baseball is, of course, in the league championship series. Football's in the middle of the season. Hockey and basketball are getting geared up, and soccer's doing something. I'm not sure what, but it's doing something. So I thought what I would do for this story is using 3 books that are near and dear to my heart. One which fits perfectly on the back of a toilet, called The Basketball Hall of Shame, and a couple of books that were turned on to me by an old dear friend of ours, David. Books by a guy named Terry Pluto. David in college said, "Have you read the Terry Pluto book, Loose Balls, A History of the ABA?" And then a few years later, Terry Pluto came out with another book called Tall Tales, A History of the NBA. So these little anecdotes I'm going to share with you today are taken from these 3 books, and a couple of them are taken from my own memory.
Okay.
So I'm going to share some of these with you in a little bunch of stories I'm calling Hardwood Hijinx.
Okay.
I came up with it myself.
Yeah, good
So
title.
let's start off with a couple of quick tales from the Boston Celtics. Are you Kevin McHale fan at all? You like Kevin McHale? Indifferent to him?
Indifferent to him.
Okay, well, this may get you on his side. Former college roommates Kevin McHale and Chris Engler faced off in 1984 as professional basketball players. McHale's Boston Celtics were thoroughly thumping Engler's New Jersey Nets when late in the contest, Kevin whispered to his friend that he would let him in for an easy jumper. Engler dribbled in, took his shot, only to have McHale viciously block the ball back against Engler's forehead. I thought you were going to give me the shot, said a surprised Engler. McHale's response, yeah, I lied. Do you remember Chuck Person?
Yeah.
The rifleman.
The rifleman, yeah.
Yeah, played for the Pacers and then the Spurs for a
Spurs
while
toward
in his
the end,
career.
right?
Yeah, hell of a 3-point shot, right? Hence the name. Well, I don't know where this story's from. I think I read an interview with Chuck Person once about the best trash talker in the NBA. He was talking about Larry Bird.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, it was Christmas Day, in a game between his Pacers and the Celtics, Chuck Person had a horribly high fever. He was feeling like absolute shit. He had the flu, I think. Larry Bird greeted him before the game, and he said, man, I heard you're not feeling well, Chuck. I'm sorry about that. Listen, I've got a Christmas gift for you. I'll give it to you later. The Celtics won the tip-off. The ball came to Bird, who immediately fired off a successful three-pointer while yelling, Merry Christmas, Chuck! And Person fell over to the ground laughing. He could not help himself. It's easy to be funny when you're a 3-time world champion, I guess.
Right.
Now, I watched a lot of pro ball in the 70s and 80s when I could as a kid, live preferably, or on TV when it was on TV. Sometimes it was hard to find on TV unless it was the playoffs.
Yeah, back in those days, yeah.
Yeah. But you probably remember, like a lot of people our age, probably remember the great Daryl Dawkins.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Remember Daryl Dawkins? He was known as Dr. Dunk. He was known as Sir Slam. He was also known by the name that was allegedly bequeathed to him by the great Stevie Wonder, and that is Chocolate Thunder. Do you remember that nickname?
Yeah, sure.
I had a poster of him posing with the lightning bolts of Chocolate Thunder.
I mean, even better that Stevie Wonder is the source of that. I did not know that part.
Yeah, apparently he was at a game and enjoying it, and came up with
Stevie Wonder was enjoying a game of basketball. That's okay.
I beats me.
Right.
But we associate him with a lot of things, but he had a great shooting percentage. There are many seasons where he was second or third in the league with his shooting percentage because he was a dunker. I mean, he would get the ball, he played center, he would get in the ball and just slam it home. You'd get it into the basket and just go nuts. He played on a great Philadelphia 76ers team in the late 70s and early 80s. But Bryan, I'd forgotten this. He didn't win his championship with the 76ers. He was gone by the time they won their championship in 83. He only won his championship, his one and only championship. He won
the Lakers?
the 1989 Detroit Pistons.
Oh, wow.
Like at the very last season of his career, he finally won a championship with the Pistons. But he's probably best remembered, Bryan, for his destruction of seemingly innocent backboards and his skill for naming the dunks which dispatched said backboards. On November 13th of 1979, he wrecked his first one while visiting the Kansas City Kings, the old Kansas City Kings.
Wow.
Who for 1 or 2 seasons were known as the Kansas City Omaha Kings. I have an old pennant somewhere that calls them the Kansas City Omaha Kings. They were visiting the Kings in Memorial Stadium. He was defended by Kansas City center Bill Robazine. Dawkins' two-handed jam caused the board to explode, raining glass down on the court and the players, all of whom were unhurt except Robazine, who was cut on his hand. That dunk was named the Chocolate Thunder Flying, Robazine Crying, Teeth Shaking, Glass Breaking, Rump Roasting, Bun Toasting, Wham Bam, I Am Jam.
Bun toasting.
Dawkins then went on a tear of spectacular dunks over the next stretch of games, but none were backboard shattering. These feats of dunkism carried such colorful sobriquets as the in-your-face disgrace, the left-handed spine chiller supreme, which I think is also a good Taco Bell lunch menu combo name for the month of Halloween.
It's great. No tomatoes. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And then this one sounds like straight out of the George Clinton songbook. The Sexophonic Turbo Delight dunk.
Uh-huh.
The Cover Your Damn Head dunk. Simple, but absolutely appropriate. The Lookout Below dunk. And one of my favorites, the Greyhound Bus dunk. The last one saved for those occasional baseline to baseline, coast to coast dunks where he just went from one end of the court to the other.
That's the Greyhound.
That's the Greyhound bus dunk. Yeah.
Right.
Oh. 22 days after the Kansas City shattering, the Sixers were hosting the San Antonio Spurs when Dawkins killed off yet another backboard. I didn't mean to, Dawkins was quoted as saying. It was the power, the chocolate thunder. I could feel it surging through my body, fighting to get out. I had no control. He named that one the no playing, get out of the way in, backboard swaying, game delaying dunk. Now, back then, the commissioner of the league was Larry O'Brien. He was named after the championship trophy.
Right.
Commissioner Larry O'Brien. He'd had enough of this by now. He ordered that all the backboards henceforth be equipped with collapsible rims.
Right.
He said enough. Now, Dawkins wanted to get the last word in because he was Daryl Dawkins. He said, I did more for job safety in the NBA than all of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration regulations.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. But something to think about, just as the American Basketball Association, which had merged with the league some 4 years prior to this killing spree he went on with backboards, just as the ABA had given us the wonder of the 3-point shot, it actually gave us the first shattered backboard 9 years before Daryl Dawkins did it in Kansas City. A guy by the name of, and the ABA had some great names, Charles Helicopter Hentz. Oh. He played for the Pittsburgh Condors. On November 6th of 1970, Hentz took out a glass backboard in the second quarter while playing the Carolina Cougars at Dorton Arena in Raleigh. Now, this being the ABA, supplies were always difficult to come by, so the game went on with an antique wooden backboard that was found in a storage shed. That's from one book. Terry Pluto in his book says that it was actually rescued from a local high school and used. It took over an hour to clean up the glass and replace the broken board. Now, here's something else that Hentz did. Late in the second half, he found himself in a breakaway steal at midcourt with no one between him and the basket. The other basket that was still glass, right? Had a glass backboard. Quote, the crowd was chanting, tear it down, said Hentz. I really didn't mean to, but when I hit the dunk, damned if the board didn't explode in my face just like the first one. Boom! With a minute left and trailing by 15 points and completely out of backboards, Pittsburgh coach Jack McMahon conceded the game. Carolina won that one. Once again,
great strategy. I mean, end the game.
Well, they had no choice at that point, but right. Once again, the ABA is ahead of the curve when it comes to basketball. Bryan, did you know that the Detroit Pistons once played in Fort Wayne?
I did not know that.
Okay, so I want you to picture our good friend Major Frank Burns sitting in the crowd for this game, and maybe he traveled over because this sounds like the kind of game that Frank Burns would enjoy. Frank Burns maybe hopped on a bus and went to Minneapolis for this game. This is a game between the Fort Wayne Pistons and the two-time defending champion Minneapolis Lakers on November 22nd, 1950. So picture Frank Burns in the crowd for this one. In an effort to snap the Lakers' 29-game winning streak, Fort Wayne head coach Murray Mendenhall deployed a new tactic. Hold on to that ball around half court and force the Lakers to play man-to-man as opposed to their usual zone defense. Instead, everyone got bored to death. It was an awful game to play and even more awful to watch. quote, a sports tragedy, in the words of Minneapolis sports writer Charles Johnson. The opening tip was won by Fort Wayne, which stalled from the opening play. Occasionally there would be a pass, or the other team would break up that pass, or maybe foul. It became the lowest scoring game in NBA history, with Fort Wayne eking out a 1-point victory, 19-18. A whole bunch of records were set. Least points scored by a team, 18, the Lakers. Previous low was 38. Least points combined, 37. The previous, 83. Least numbers of field goals made in a game. Both teams scored just 4. The previous was 13. Least attempted shots in a game, 13. The Pistons. No previous record was kept. Least attempted shots per quarter, 0. The Pistons. No previous record was kept. Least points per quarter, 1. The Lakers. No previous record was kept. George Mikan, the big man, the big center, the biggest guy to play basketball at the time, he scored 15 of the 18 Lakers points. Games of this era weren't always quite this bad, but fourth quarters became stall and foul fests, with the team holding the lead, merely holding the ball and waiting to be fouled. Now, that still goes on today, but imagine that without the 24-second shot clock.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which 4 years after this game finally became a thing in the NBA. So it took them 4 years after this debacle to say,
that early? 54, 55?
Maybe we should have a shot clock that prevents this. And eventually zone defenses were outlawed for a long, long time. As a kid, I remember watching zone defenses technicals getting called.
Right.
All the time. That still cracks me up. 19-18, lowest scoring game in NBA history. And finally, I'm going to close out with the 1994 season opener at the Alamo Dome, where the Spurs lost to the visiting Golden State Warriors. Now, it's bad enough when you lose your season opener to one of your rivals, and it would have been bad enough because I was at that game with my buddy Rick Sambusini. But the pyrotechnics set off the sprinklers.
That's right.
And drenched a good chunk of the stands. Our seats received a fine mist, not unlike sitting on a dock overlooking the ocean. The game was delayed almost an hour as they cleaned up the water and the seats. But that was only the second craziest thing to happen basketball-wise in the Alamo Dome that year. It was surpassed only by a feat accomplished by the great Moses Malone in his last game as a professional basketball player, where he was acting as backup center to the Spurs' David Robinson. Malone hit a buzzer-beating three-pointer from the opposite free throw line going into halftime. The Spurs
rings a bell, yeah.
The Spurs beat the Hornets that game, and that season they went from the ridiculous to the sublime. And I was there for both of them because I remember walking off to the stands to grab a hot dog or popcorn or Coke, looked over my shoulder just in time to see Moses heave it all the way down the court and into the basket.
And wasn't that I think it was his only career three-pointer.
It may have been. I looked up the stats for it, and he was 100% three-pointers.
Right.
He was the best three-pointers.
Right. So if it wasn't the only one, maybe in his career he made 3 or something, but it's something.
But for that game, he was 100% from the three-point line.
Right.
Sources for this piece and this look into basketball history. I think I'm going to do this again because there's some great college stories in there that I want to share. Maybe around March Madness time, I'll come back and Hardwood Hijinx Part 2. Sources for this were Bruce Nash and Alan Zullo's 1991 book, The Basketball Hall of Shame from Pocketbooks of New York, and 2 of Terry Pluto's books, 1990's Loose Balls and 1994's Tall Tales, both from Fireside Books of New York. And if you are at all a basketball fan and have not read those 2 Terry Pluto books, highly recommend them because they're told from the point of view of the guys who lived it. If you want to read about the things that Daryl Dawkins got up to, like the time that he was on the plane and he knew that Buck Williams always fell asleep with his mouth open. And so they played a game called How Many Things Can We Stuff in Buck's Mouth Before He Wakes Up? I mean, you just can't beat that kind of humor, in my opinion. So there you go.
Right.
Hardwood Hijinx as we enter basketball season this October.
Yeah, the two stories that come to mind, Larry Bird, I know, was just notorious for being a trash talker. And but in a funny way, not just cussing and fuming at guys, which is boring. There's one game, I forget, they're playing someone who was a team that was kind of a basement dweller, and he's letting up for the opening tip, and whoever's defending him, Bird just whispers, "You know what? I'm going to play left-handed tonight." And then you can see he doesn't take any shots from any like serious distance left-handed, but you can see footage of this game, and there are these little left-handed layups, left-handed little skyhook floaters, left, and he makes he goes for 38 points all with his left hand. And then there's one, I remember seeing a clip with John Sally from the Pistons. Again, I think opening tip, again, they're walking out and Sally is on him and Bird's like looking around a little bit and like and says to Sally, "So you're covering me? You're not double teaming?" Like, sorry, man. And Sally says to him, "Sorry, man, it's just me." Like, okay, I'm telling you what's going to happen. We're going to get the tip. I'm going to pivot, go down the corner and hit it, and take a 3-point shot from the corner, and it's going to be money. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, Bird would apparently routinely tell defenders exactly what he was going to do, and then do it over and over and over again, just to screw with them. It's funny stuff.
That's ridiculous stuff.
Yep.
And then the one where I hated the Lakers growing up, still don't like them, but
right.
They knocked the Spurs out of the Western Conference Finals twice when I was a kid in the 80s. And there's this one great shot of Magic Johnson going down, and he just hurls up this no chance it's going in shot from like near midcourt at the end of regulation, and it bounces off the rim and falls out. And he goes, "Magic, you look like you expected that to go in." And he said, "Man, I expect them all to go in." I just kind of love that, that
yeah,
that attitude that some of those guys had, because you knew every year it was going to come down to the Celtics and the Lakers every year, and eventually you took a side. So anyway, and I chose the Detroit Pistons.
All right, my turn.
Yes, sir.
It's time for the Dream Idiot's curse word of the week.
Ever heard the term vato? V-A-T-O?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for years and years, I was convinced that for a long period of time that vato was actually kind of a jokey insult. It can be V-A-T-O. Sometimes it can be B-A-T-O. I have a buddy in Austin who, whenever I saw him or he sent me an email, he would start it up with either "What's up, foo?" or "Hey, vato," which I was convinced was the same as pendejo, asshole or idiot. But turns out vato is kind of a northwestern Mexico, southwestern U.S., South Texas, Mexico, Arizona, Baja California. But vato is just kind of just this, the Spanish for dude. It's apparently it's offensive to call a woman a vato, but it's not at all intended to be an insult, but still it's a great word, which I realize I use quite a bit, but I didn't know that it wasn't actually an insult until just recently.
So this is a non-curse word.
It's a word that I thought was a curse word, and it turns out it's not.
I always thought it meant like dude, bro, homie, something like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
not
right.
Yeah, what's up, vato? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, vato, good word.
Yeah, and that's one of the joys of growing up where we did, right? Where you have this just kind of for lack of a better word, Spanglish, where all these words kind of creep into your vocabulary, and you try to explain to someone outside of the of the culture what a word means, and you really can't, because it's like, well, it's like someone was trying to say, I'm going to use a word here, pinche. It's like, what does pinche mean? Because it's pinche. It means pinche. You can't really
right. It doesn't translate.
no, like at this one restaurant in town, it says, "Hey, wash your pinche hands in the restroom." And one of my kids said, "What does that mean?" I said, "Well, it's it. Does it mean dirty?" I said, "No, not really. It means like it's pinche. You can't translate it
Right.
into another." It's
like Schadenfreude. You just get it's not quite doesn't quite compute.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was actually told recently, 'cause I was again, being from Texas and not speaking Spanish but knowing a lot of words, I am at least reasonably adept at rolling my R's, and I rolled an R without really intending. I mean, I wasn't being silly or anything. I was pronouncing something correctly, and someone's like, "God damn, you're good with that whole rolled R thing." Like, well, yeah, born and raised in Texas, that's comes with the territory.
Didn't mean to. Sorry.
Right. So anyway, vato.
A good word.
So anyway, because we've done for my stuff recently, it's been sort of heavy on the history. Wanted to shift gears a bit and not do history this time around, and got a little bit interested in this topic because I had witnessed some of this behavior recently and kind of wanted to dive into it a little bit more.
Pornography.
Yeah. Just
No?
go to
Okay.
no. So I had a small accident a couple years ago. I had some fairly major surgery. I have a hunk of titanium in my right leg, and side effects of having this surgery is that my body kind of tightens up when I sit for a long period of time, and so I'm often tight. I often sort of walk with a bit of a limp, because my muscles tighten up quite a bit, and it takes me a long time to sort of loosen up and walk, if not normally, at least close to normally. But I've noticed that in the past, a couple times in the past couple of years, that I'm with someone who I don't necessarily know that well, but and as far as I know, they're completely able-bodied. But after a short period of time of being with them, suddenly they're kind of walking with a limp too. And like, are you screwing with me? Like, what, is this like, am I being, made fun of? But it turns out this is a sort of an empathetic response. This is a subconscious, unconscious thing, called echopraxia, is when you take on, when you're mirroring back to someone behavior that they're engaged in. I also realized, again, the past couple of years, that when I'm speaking to someone who has a little bit more, who speaks a little slower and has a bit of a Texas Southern accent, that I'll inject a y'all, which historically I would never say y'all, but that's a similar thing. It's called echolalia, when you're when you're mirroring back to someone their speech patterns, and it's not making fun of them. It's a way to sort of build a connection and have, not quite empathy, but it shows interest. It shows, a desire to have a connection. So I want to chat through a number of other things that are, some of these may be kind of obvious, but I think they're interesting from a, I don't know, behavioral, sociological sort of standpoint. The types of body language that we all engage in, and even some animals engage in this exact same behavior, and sort of what they mean. And you can feel free to chime in, because I'm sure you'll have thoughts and examples of these as well. First one, kind of an obvious one, the eyebrow flash, the whole raised eyebrows either quickly or for a longer period of time. An eyebrow flash in sort of sexual relationship dynamics, that's showing interest, but it's also showing interest professionally. You're having a conversation and someone is saying something that piques your interest. It's very common to raise your eyebrows because it shows recognition. It's kind of a, well, listen to this, look at me sort of message. And this is absolutely behavior that has been exhibited in monkeys, to show that sort of a certain level of engagement, say. another super important one that I remember, I'm sure your father did this as well, that was just beaten into me as elementary school, middle school, the whole good handshake thing. This still drives me completely crazy that so many people our age are just terrible at this. When you shake someone's hand, you look them in the eye. I mean, typically, I think smiling is better than not smiling. But you offer a firm and sort of equal grasp, but tending toward the firm side of things, and it's sort of a leaning in, fostering connection. But there's a sort of a showing respect and showing strength, but but again, it's a mirroring type of a behavior as well. And my biggest pet peeve in the world is, I was meeting with some folks recently, a married couple, and the woman was maybe 5 feet tall, and she had the death grip, and then the husband, who was my size, gave me the dead fish. I'm like, how can you be like, over the age of 18 and you're still doing this? This is just not acceptable. Someone should have taught you better than this.
There's a story about the time that Hoagie Carmichael, the great American songwriter and singer and pianist, met Charles Lindbergh.
Mm-hmm.
And Charles Lindbergh met him and just kind of did the dead fish. And Mr. Carmichael, Colonel Lindbergh, Mr. Carmichael. And he said, Hoagie, pleased to meet you. And Lindbergh was like, and just gave him kind of a thing, kind of a lip handshake. And Carmichael apparently shook his hand real hard and said, well, to you too, and turned around and walked off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I guess it depends on what it is that you want from the exchange. But if you're looking to foster connection, or it's a client relationship and you want it to be a good connection, this is what you're supposed to do. If you're trying to foster indifference or condescension or whatever, be insulting, then by all means do that. It's a great way to quickly convey that you don't give a damn. Next one is sort of what I was talking about with the echopraxia. It's just sort of authentic mirroring, sort of recognizing behavior in one person and sort of adopting that person's behavior with sort of broad strokes in terms of overall demeanor and kind of how you present yourself in general. Some of that stuff can be sort of subtle. Along those same lines, there also is mutual gazing. So being willing to look someone in the eyes. You don't do the Jeffrey Dahmer death stare where you stare them dead in the face and never blink, and you're looking at 100% of the time, because that's off-putting and scary. But it's sort of this 50% or more of the time you look someone in the eyes, and they will probably do the same. Nothing drives me crazier than, the dead fish handshake drives me nuts. But then talking to someone, there are people who, again, just find it impossible because it's risky or it's exposing or something, that they will look anywhere but at your eyes. It's like, no, you got, if you want to have a connection and have a successful outcome, you have to be willing to. These are things that if you really are genuinely bad at some of these things, in my mind, you could actually practice this. Especially if you're a tragically single person, and you have to be willing to work on some of these things, because otherwise you will get nowhere. Also, lack of barriers is a big one. So you're having a one-on-one conversation with a boss, a colleague, a client, whatever it is, having a bunch of debris that is in front of you that will only serve to create a distraction. People who impulsively, especially in a social setting, look at their damn phone. I'm certainly guilty of that, but invariably when I go and meet someone, or I have company over, or whatever's going on, I intentionally, you're now here. I grab my phone, I put it aside, I turn it off, I do something with it, because I think it's just ridiculous to expect someone to want to engage with you while you're endlessly looking down at your lap or looking at something else. So put shit to the side. An actual genuine real smile is called a Duchenne smile, Duchenne. social psychologists do a bunch of research on this. A
Heard of
genuine, what's that?
I never heard of a decaying smile.
Doing a genuine smile is actually very difficult to fake. A smile it's a real smile, but you also then have the kind of crow's feet next to your eyes. And again, the smile is seen in some other, a little bit in primates, but it's also seen in very, very new babies when they recognize a parent, that real genuine smile. But also with babies, that they're not maybe as infants, but the second they're asked to smile for a camera, they also get really, really good at doing the fake smile, the George W. Bush, you caught me doing something stupid smile, which is the God, no shit, forced look, right? And so, that's I guess you can't, that's a harder thing to probably practice, but it's also something to just be aware of, that when you're looking at someone's actions, are they genuinely, a genuine smile is obvious. And so that's a good sign.
I had someone tell me at I've only been, I think it was a 10th year high school reunion. Someone said, yeah, I wasn't sure it was you until I saw you smile.
Yeah, right.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's
right.
When your genuine self comes out, I guess.
Right. Yeah. It's, your signature, your thumbprint, whatever. Yeah.
And then she said, unique. Yep, you're still an asshole. And she walked off. No, I'm kidding. That was later in the evening.
Next one is, people always claim that the trait they like in others, especially in partners, is having a sense of humor, being able to crack a joke. I forget whose comment this is. It may be Jimmy Carr, whose stuff I think is a British comedian whose stuff I know, but listeners may not know. But there's someone who I remember saying that giving someone a genuine laugh is like giving them a jolt of sleep plus sex plus exercise plus meditation all at once, because it's just so good for your body to genuinely laugh. And so if you have a sense of humor and you're adept at using it and fostering that connection, giving people a burst of serotonin or dopamine or whatever goes a long way to fostering good connection. There's a whole bunch of stuff with body language and what you're supposed to do with your hands, and this is one of the ones that I've realized I've maybe not done the best with over time, but having your hands be open in front of you. If you're doing if you're talking to a group, or even if it's in a social setting, having your hands in front of you, sort of palm up, shows openness. If you're doing sort of palm down, or if you're doing anything that's sort of pointing at people, it comes off as either being closed or being aggressive. If you're in politics, there have been books written on this. The fact that both Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton adopted, because someone told them to, the whole kind of slight, I'm not sure what it's called. It's kind of a slight thumbs up. The fist is together, with the knuckles toward the audience, with the thumb a little bit upwards, and it's it allows you to be confident and sincere without being threatening. That's another sort of weird trick you can use that's tied to body language. Again, more of the same, leaning in versus leaning out, just how you situate your body. If you're in a conversation and someone starts speaking, if they're leaning in toward you, they want to hear what you have to say. If they lean back, if they turn away, turn even 5 degrees away from facing you, then things aren't landing the way they should be. Some of this are things that I don't feel especially comfortable with. I'm not a big toucher, especially with people that are not. I'm not going to pat someone on the shoulder or grab someone's arm necessarily. That's kind of not how I engage with folks. I certainly had weird things with clients and different people I don't know who are happy to get in my space. Like, that's so weird to me that, hey, wait, don't touch me. What are you doing? But so some of that, if you're a man especially, don't touch people without without knowing what you're doing.
And don't sniff their hair.
Don't right. Don't ask them, what the color of their underwear. No to that. there's a whole bunch of things tied to body language that sort of conveys stress, because you're carrying stress in your shoulders, in your upper body. If someone's has their ankles crossed, or their legs crossed, if they have their legs crossed like in and around the leg of a chair or the leg of a table that they're in front of, that means that they are carrying stress, and this is they may be uncomfortable and kind of closed off to what's going on. If you have if your hands are clasped, someone speaking and they're someone is holding their own hand, again, that person may be experiencing some sort of stress. So that's sort of like a weird self hug. It's a soothing almost a nervous tick kind of thing, where you're rubbing your hands or holding your hands together. There are tons more of these. I realized years ago, when I would be fidgety or nervous, especially in public, I would bury my hands in my pockets or cross my arms. Crossing your arms apparently is a big one. Trump does it like crazy, where he's sitting in court or sitting somewhere. I think during at least one of the debates years ago, he's being asked a question and he's standing there with his arms crossed. That just conveys a complete sort of fuck you.
It's defensive. It's defensive. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Defensive disinterest. Putting your hands all the way in your pocket, all four fingers in your pockets, is kind of the same thing. Defensive, but maybe fearful. Especially if the whole James Dean with the thumbs hidden but the fingers out is not good. But if you do it with fingers in and your thumbs out, because your thumbs are somehow more dominant, thumbs out is somehow perceived as being confident and is sort of deemed to be acceptable and more open. But if your thumb is hidden, it's defensiveness or unease.
I'm cool. You know why? Because I got these. I got thumbs.
Right. Neck rubbing is a big one. You start talking to someone and they're sort of scratching their hand around their collarbone. Again, a nervous twitch. They're looking for positive sort of touch reinforcement, if only from themselves, because they are uncomfortable, uneasy for some reason. A big one is, and I do this sometimes when I meet a lot of strangers, and if I don't like someone, I'm aware of the fact that I will physically back up. If you start talking, if someone walks up to you, and your immediate reaction is to want to take a step back, that's a telltale sign. I mean, what is my body telling me? Oh yeah, I don't like you for some reason. So either you're a threat or there's something about your vibe that I don't like. So if your instinct is to retreat, then that's not a good sign. And one that's even bigger these days, I'm not sure how this directly correlates, but with so many folks spending so much time on computers and especially on phones, shoulders back, head up. So if your posture is so terrible because you spend so much time looking down at your damn phone, you have to do something about that. You have to be willing to, especially adults, put your damn phone down, and lean back and raise your head up. I was in a Starbucks recently, standing in line waiting to order. I left my phone in my car. I looked around, and every single customer in the Starbucks, like 30 people, were all on their phone simultaneously, including everyone in line. And they're all looking down. Like, what? Okay, whatever, guys. There's nothing on your phone that could possibly be that interesting while you wait for your fucking latte. So put the phone down.
It is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it drives me insane. I mean, I do it. I do it a lot for work. I read a bunch of stuff on my phone, but it's I don't know. It's just I find it aggravating that we all have to compete with everyone's inclination to want to look at whatever it is.
Well, there are times when I expect them all to look up simultaneously and just start chanting, "One of us, one of us, one of."
Or talk to me. Hello, talk to me. Touching ears is another one that's sort of a sign of unease. And then fidgeting with objects. I mean, 10 years ago, someone came up with those damn fidget spinners. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little bit sympathetic to that, especially with kids. As a child, I was a crazy ass introvert and was very nervous, didn't like doing, my biggest nightmare ever was, fourth grade, fifth grade, being told I had to present something to the class would create it was just a nervous breakdown. And for a million years, I tore the hell out of my fingernails. And so I get the inclination to want to, play with a quarter, a fidget spinner, whatever the hell it is, twirl your hair. I understand that, but I don't necessarily. I don't know whether I think it's okay to encourage that or not. Handing toys to children to make them fidget more, like I'm not sure why I think that's the best idea.
Well, that's the catharsis versus what am I trying to say here? It's the whole idea of are you getting the emotions out or are you stimulating them? It's catharsis versus stimulation.
Right.
Is what you're asking. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things that have to do with presentation in terms of clothing and jewelry and makeup and all those types of things. And there's also a whole bunch of things that are not words, that are nonverbal things that are done as well, that are very common across most humans, that are also interesting. I got interested in this and decided to dive into it as a topic. So that's all.
No, that's very cool. And so much of it goes unsaid and unexamined, I guess, because it's stuff that we just take for granted and we don't think about. And it's complicated by the use of social media at this point.
Right.
Like you said, there's an extra layer of difficulty that we just don't think about. And the one I really find fascinating is the echolalia and echopraxia, when you mirror back to someone, how or subconscious that is. And my mother used to tell me that I did that all the time. Like when we would travel somewhere, that
right.
within 2 days, I would have an accent wherever we went.
Oh, really?
And I it's not something that I would consciously try to do. It would just come out that way.
Just bubbles up, right?
Yeah, as an effort. You're trying to fit in. There's some tribalism involved. I mean, I think there's some reflexive things going on there that just you can't escape. And I think when you're younger, it's probably easier to do, right? Because you're less hardwired at that point.
Yeah, I wonder if that's true,
Linguistically,
or
at least.
yeah, maybe so. I mean, I'm cognizant of the fact that I'm told all the time that I speak too quickly. And so sometimes in this podcast, I realize I have to force myself to slow down because I have a paragraph I'm ready to say and it all comes out. But what I realize in dealing with whatever, anyone, go to the grocery store, that my particular delivery comes off as overstimulation, is too much all at once. And then people are like, oh, crap, what? And so I try to do. I mean, on more of a conscious level, realize, oh, I'm speaking too quickly. So, especially in Texas, where we have some folks that are kind of have that drawl, and so I have to force myself now and again to come in and say, hey, how are y'all? Just kind of slow the pace down, and just in order to not overwhelm someone, and foster that connection, and make people feel comfortable.
Well, when I lived in New York, I lived there for 3 years. So when I came back to Texas, it was like, come on, get to the verb. Let's go.
right. Spit it out.
And when I first moved to New York, it was like, whoa, basta. Let's come on. Pump the brakes a little bit there, fella.
right.
And then the echopraxia, the taking on the physical. That's interesting. You talk about that, about how there are times when I've seen like when I had my first job waiting tables, I was watching someone wait tables, and I thought this guy had this one waiter, like if there was someone who was differently abled, like this one customer came in regularly, was in a wheelchair, he would bend down reflexively to take her order. He wouldn't tower above her. He would like get to her level, and he would do the same thing with kids, like immediately move to that.
Right.
And he said at first he had to think about it, but then after a while it became like second nature to to shift his perspective, to move
Right.
in,
Mhm.
to shift the way he was thinking about, how do I see the world versus how someone else sees the world. That's pretty remarkable, because I mean, the fact that we're able to do that, and I guess for some people it's just an unconscious thing. They just start doing it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
pretty
mean,
amazing.
and on some levels, I think that's a sign of whether you're a good, decent, and a person capable of empathy. I mean, I suspect that it's a benchmark of sociopaths, that they're really really bad at stuff like that. That they don't recognize cues. They don't recognize when someone's uncomfortable, and they still they will repeatedly engage in behavior that is very clearly to you and me, whatever, negative or threatening or whatever it is, but they don't recognize that that's how it's being taken. So I don't know, cool stuff.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's keep on being nice to each other, and not being sociopaths, if we can.
That's a good
Uh,
Halloween message, almost Halloween message.
Almost Halloween message. Well, as always, everybody, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week
Yes,
on the
indeed.
spookiest day of the year. Eat some blueberry with Kenneth Cheesebro.
All right, thanks,
And
folks.
yes, and be good to each other. Bye.
Bye.
This is a Rough Tiger production.
Bong bong,
Mhm.
Bryan.
Bong bong,
Bong bong.
bong bong. Good.